Hi, Gary Chillingworth here for Air Gunner Magazine and Shooting and Country TV. Welcome to Life at the Range. I hope you've had a truly wonderful year and a great Christmas, and that Santa brought you everything that you could ever have desired. For those of you who haven't seen it, go back and watch our Christmas special video that was released on Boxing Day, where Santa gets to blow some stuff up. So it's a really fun video. I hope you all enjoy it. So what are we going to be doing today? Well, a lot of people that I know have actually been given telescopic sights for Christmas. So as we have a lot of new shooters coming into the sport and they don't know exactly how to set up a telescopic sight, I thought that that's what we were going to do today. We're basically going to go from the putting it on the rifle. We're going to have a little chat about the different types of mounts you can get, but we're going to do a proper mount video at some point in the near future. We're going to get it all lined up. We're going to talk about eye relief, and then we're going to have a quick chat about how you can set the scope up so it works the best for you. So that's what we're doing today. Hope you enjoy it, and as ever, welcome to Life at the Range. Okay, so telescopic sights and how to mount them. Now, I'll be honest with you, this isn't something I thought about doing, but I had a great email from Neil Robinson. I'll put a picture up here, down there, somewhere. Now, Neil is an experienced shooter, but he emailed me and said, look, Gary, there's a lot of people at his club who don't know how to do this. They turn up with scopes on their guns and they're too far away from their eye, or they're too close, or they're rotated round. They've got super high mounts with small objectives, and because we've all got to learn somewhere. And I knew nothing when I first started, and it took me time and buying lots of different types of mount before I decided what I needed. So I'm going to talk today about two different manufacturers. Now, this isn't because they're the best. These are the ones that I use. There are other manufacturers. I mean, Hawk, we've got a Hawk scope here, and we've got our Zeiss Conquest 4. There are many different manufacturers of mounts. I mean, Hawk make their own mounts, good mounts. MTC give you mounts out of the box. I know plenty of people who use them. They're great. Blue Circle make a super low mount. And then you have what I consider the two big hitters in the market. And they are BKL, which make a double strap mount, and then Sports Match. And they make just a really great mount. But then again, they come in different sizes. And this is the thing that I've always really not understood. Sports Match, for instance, don't make a low mount. They start at medium, then they go high, then they go super high. Then you've got adjustable mounts, then you've got damper mounts, and then you've got one-piece mounts. And BKL, again, sort of medium high, super high. What mount do you do? Well, there are a couple of different camps within the HFT community. Now, if you're an FT shooter, I don't really comment on FT because I don't know that much about it. So today we're going to be talking about plinking and HFT and for hunters. And what a lot of us like is to get the scope as close to the barrel as possible. Now, that's for two main reasons. Number one, as we all know, airgun pellets don't fly in a straight line because they're ballistics. They fly in what appears to be a bit of a curve. And if you've got them really low to the barrel, then that curve is flattened, or appears to be flattened as you look at it through the scope. The other thing is, if you can imagine when you're laying on a peg and the ground isn't completely level, you might have the peg in front of you and that might be slightly offset. It's very easy to get, we know, what we call cant. So if you can imagine that's the rifle and that's perfectly level and the rifle is slightly angled, which is often you don't notice as a shooter. If you've got something that's angled there and it's angled that way, if the scope or the objective lens is close to the barrel and it moves, say, 5 degrees, that's only, say, maybe 8 degrees now offline. However, if you've got a mount that's higher and you still move the base at 5 degrees, because this is higher, that is now, say, 12 degrees offline. So the higher the mount, the harder it is to make sure you're perfectly level on every shot. So for a beginner, keeping that objective lens as close to the barrel as you can be a big advantage. Again, we're going to look at mounts in depth in a later video, and we'll really get into this about cans and things like that. But if you've got a 44mm objective or a 42 or smaller, go for a medium mount. If you've got a 50mm objective, you're probably going to need to go for a high mount. Unless you've got a rifle like this, which might have a rail or a stire, then you might still be able to get away with a medium mount. But that can be an advantage of going to a gun shop and talking to them about the mounts, and they should have a set that you can try with your scope, and you can work it out as you go along. So, sports match, BKL. The other thing is, I say, this is called a double strap. We'll put up a picture here. As you can see, essentially, it's just two straps at both ends. Then you've got a single strap, which is the sports match. Again, we'll put a picture up here. They don't grip better or worse. It's just a design thing. Just try and stay away from a single strap with a single, with a single screw. I personally like having 4 screws per, or 4 bolts, sorry, four bolts per top section. It just gives you added security. I don't know if I'll be honest, I've never used ones with just one, but I like having one at each corner. So that's a brief overview, but now let's get the rifle set up. Okay, so here we have our rifle, our HW95. Now, you're going to be getting very used to this rifle over the next few issues or next few videos, because we're setting up an HFT on a budget series. And the rifle that we've been given is this HW95, and the scope is the Hawk, which is it's a truly great initial setup, but more of that later. Now, BKLs have got a bit of a funny trick. When you buy a brand new set of BKLs, they will not fit on your rail. And that's what they're designed to do. They're actually designed to clamp the rail. And if you'll notice, on the side here, you've got these 2 screws here, bolt holes here, which are from these 2 on this side to bolt onto the rail. And then you've got this third one in the center. And what you do is you take one of the bolts from the top, you attach that into the center, and essentially it's a spreader. And you tighten that up, and you tighten it up really tight, and that spreads the clamps apart, and then you can put it on your rail. Then the first time when you take it off, it will then sit back and it will clamp onto the rail. Now, I'll be honest with you, I over tightened these slightly, and the first one you can now slide, but you can't physically take it off. This back one, you can't move it. So I would have to put the spreader in there to actually physically be able to slide these off. So when you initially want to set up the rifle, put the mounts on the gun, and then take your scope and place it on top. And what you want is, I always like to try and keep it as wide as possible. You don't want the 2 of them right up close to the elevation and to the turrets. You want them as wide, so it's spread out, so you've got a nice stable base. Then once that's on, we'll put the top caps on, and we'll finger tight them. So we'll start putting those on, and then we'll be back in a sec. Okay, right, so we've got these initially put in. We're just going to put in our last bolt. And what I would recommend you do is, whenever you're using bolts, put them in a tin. Don't just leave them on the side, because I can guarantee you one of them will escape and fall on the grass, and then you're absolutely messed up. Now, when you're starting to tighten these up, if you notice on this one is like right on tight, and this one is nice and sort of loose. So we want to loosen that off tighten the other side, tighten this one down, because what we want is we want a nice even spread on both sides. We don't want one side clamped down really hard, and we don't want one side really opened up. Now, how tight do you tighten them? Well, I think somebody said once, you can get sort of mini torque wrenches, and there are torque levels available for the scopes. But what I do is I tighten it up, and I like using these kind of little screwdriver ones, so that with these you can put a lot of torque on. But what I do is I go and I feel it and still starts resisting, and then I give it another quarter turn, and then quarter turn on the other side, quarter turn, quarter turn. We're going to need to loosen this off because obviously we haven't set the scope up properly yet, but till we feel resistance, then another quarter turn, but don't like crank it right up because you will end up crimping the tube. So now what we need to do is we need to make sure that the scope is set up with the reticle. I had a great email from a guy saying, Gary, please stop calling it reticule. That's a small Italian handbag. It's reticle. I've been calling it a reticule for years. So please, sorry, reticle. So we need to make sure that the reticle is set up with the gun perfectly in line. And what we're going to need is we're going to need one of two things. We're either going to need a plumb line, basically a long line with a weight, but that can be a pain using outside because the wind can blow it around depending on how heavy the weight is. What I personally like to use is this system. It's quite simply just a piece of card that is perfectly square. If you measure it along there, it doesn't matter on the side, so it's exactly the same level with a line drawn perfectly level in the middle. You then put a drawing pin in, put it on there so it will swing back and forth, and that will always, because of gravity, point straight down. So we'll just slow it down a bit. Now you'll notice that it looks like it's hanging off to the left because the ground isn't straight, but if we put our level on, we'll just pull the phone up, put that to one side, and we put it there. If we can hold it like that, so it's perfectly in line, 0.01. So it's in line. So for me, this is the easiest way of getting a perfectly true line, which we're going to put down range. So now let's set the gun up. So we've got our plumb line or our plumb card set up down range. I've set it up at about 17, 18 yards so that I know that it will be clear in the scope. I don't want to set it too close or too far. So we'll have a little look through, and we're going to use a rest. And just looking at it now, I can see that the top of the reticle is to the right hand side of the line and the bottom of the reticle is to the left. Now, it might be a case that my gun is canted left and right. So what we need to do is we need to put a spirit level, ideally on the dovetail, but because this is a curved dovetail, we can't do that. So luckily there's a nice flat ledge sitting just behind on the stock. So we're going to put a bubble on that. Now, I do own a bubble, but for the life of me, I can't find it. Now, you can purchase these off of eBay or off of Best Fittings, or lots of different places sell them. But a cheap trick, you go down to a pound shop, buy a builder's bubble for £1, take it apart, and you've got 3 bubble levels, which I did, and I've got about 5, and for the life of me, I can't find any of them. So I'm going to do it by eye. So that is me set up. We just need to loosen off the top turrets, which we've nipped up, so that we can rotate. Let's talk amongst yourselves. Hope you all had a nice Christmas. Okay, there we go. So now we can rotate the scope. So we're going to get the rifle as level as we can on left and right. Line it up with our line. And that's absolutely spot on. We'll come back a bit. That looks absolutely level. And that's now perfectly in line. So now that it's perfectly in line, we're just going to very lightly nip up our mounts. So we're gripping the scope in place. And then once they're nipped up, we'll just put our quarter turn in. And there we go. So we now know that for this rifle, with this set of mounts, this scope is now correct and the reticule isn't on an angle. Now, what I personally like to do is this scope will never come out of these mounts unless I want to raise it or lower it or do something else. I strongly recommend every time you buy a new scope, get a set of mounts to go with it and then just leave them in there. I've done that for you. So that way I can essentially just take this off of this rifle, put it onto another rifle, and I don't have to adjust left and right. I just need to adjust back and forward. Basically, these two are now married and till death do they part. So now we want to look at eye relief, usually around about 3.5 inches. Okay, eye relief. When you put your head up to a scope, if you are too far forward, you'll notice that there is a huge black line. In fact, if you've got a scope, pause the video, go and get the scope and have a look through. Obviously, if it's attached to a rifle, be aware of your surroundings. But say, go and get yourself a scope and then we can talk through it. For the rest of us, just talk amongst yourselves and we'll wait for them to get back. Okay, back, got your scope. Right, okay, now, stick your head behind your ocular end and move your head in really tight. And you will see that there is a big black circle around the reticule. Now move your head back, and you will see that black circle disappears. So obviously your eye relief needs to be set up. Now for me, that is absolutely perfect. So I've set it up correctly. You need to slide your scope back and forward. So what I like to do when I'm setting up is I will bring the scope back towards my eye until that black line starts to appear. Then I'll push it fractionally forward so that I now know that it's right on the cusp of being there. Because when I'm doing an elevated shot and my head might not be in the correct position and I can't get my head on the scope, I can't get my head on the cheek piece, I can float my head, but I know that as long as that black circle is perfectly concentric, then I know that my head's in the right position and I won't get parallax error. Whereas if the scope was pushed all the way forward, or, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'm going to put up some pictures which you've already seen to try and explain the black circle a bit more, but that's what you need to do. Okay, so now we've got the scope on the rifle. We know that it's level. We know that it's correct back and forward. So now it's time to dial it in. We're going to unscrew the cap, top and bottom. And what I like to do is I like to centralize the scope first. Now, there are ways you can do this by putting the scope on a mirror and getting an optical center. But a very easy way is take your turrets and count. Go all the way to one side. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Count your clicks. I think 2, half of it. I'll put up the actual amount in the comment in the underneath, and that will give you a very rough optical centre. So then it's just a matter of doing the fun stuff, shooting the rifle, and we'll see how we go. So I've got a piece of card set out at about 15-20 yards. You don't want to go too far away to start with. Use as big a piece of card as you've got. And there we go. We're very, very high, so we need to come down. So we'll go for the next shot. There we go. We need to come down a little bit more. I'm still not used to shooting break barrels. There you go. We're now within 3 or 4 pellets of where we want to be. Now I want to set this rifle up with a 40-yard zero. So now that I know that the rifle is just fractionally out at 15 or 20 yards, now let's start dialing it in. So again, we're down there at 40 yards. We've got a nice big metal plate. Oh, that's not far off. Of course, you want to do this not on a windy day. So we're using the beanbag to give us a bit of extra stability. Okay, we're going 4 or 5 pellets width right. So let's just double check which way does this go right. And click OK. So give it 4 clicks left. Okay, that looks bang on right to left, but we still need to go down a bit. So we'll give it another 3. Let's push that. Let's get rid of that. That's starting to annoy me. See, that's why I like the underlever, because I've got short arms. Right. And there we go, correct height, gone slightly too much left. So we'll just give it 1 click right. Last pellet. And there we go, spot on. So we've now got a rifle that's zeroed for windage and elevation, and it's shooting essentially pellet on pellet at 40 yards. Now we need to learn our ranges. And what that is we need to set out a course from 8 to 45 yards, and that will essentially guide us, and we'll be able to learn what the scope and the gun do together. Hi, Gary from the future here. When I was editing the video, I realised we were up like nearly 40 minutes, so I've had to cut a load out. So we're going to have a part 2 where we're going to look at chair gun, the BRC calculator, and actually how to set a rifle up to, you know, 15 yards, 20 yards, 25 yards, so that you can get the most out of it. So Goodbye from Gary in the future. Oh, by the way, the lottery numbers are... Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. We've looked at setting up the rifle. We've looked at how to attach our mounts. We've looked at how to centralise the scope within the mounts to make sure the reticle is absolutely... I've got it right, reticle, not reticule, to make sure that the scope is absolutely level. We've looked at moving the scope back and forward for eye relief and using the black dot. We've had a brief look at shooting it on the range, but would you like me to go into more depth about how to get the best out of your gun for, say, shooting 15s, 20s, 25s, 35s, long distance, short distance? I think what we're going to do is next week we're actually going to do a physical... We're going to go around the course at MAD, and we're going to shoot some targets, and we're going to talk about what I think when I'm approaching a target to see how we go. Let me know what you want me to cover. A couple of the videos we've got coming up, we're going to do some elevated shots and some low down shots. We're going to be doing the shooting in the wind, but I need to know from you guys what you'd like me to cover this year. As ever, thank you for joining us at the range today. Look after yourselves, shoot straight, and to quote William Shakespeare, be excellent to one another. Ta-da.